around the country, from Newark, New Jersey to Allentown, Pennsylvania, have discovered high levels of lead in their own water supplies. And now a report has found high levels of lead in 3 D.C. public schools, prompting testing in every single public and charter school in Washington, D.C. in the next 60 days.
EPA, unfortunately, has created an environment when it comes to lead in water where cheating has just been allowed rampant for the last 10 years or so. And so they've created a culture in which this is allowed to occur, and lead in water risks are not taken seriously. And, you know, we had children lead poison in the schools in D.C. in 2005, 2006. That was covered up. It's happening in schools all around the country right now. So, you know, again, it's just very disturbing.
Water, the most common substance on Earth. Every one of water's properties is unique, and they do not easily fit into the generally accepted laws of physics. Why does water have the highest surface tension of all liquids? Why is it the most powerful solvent on Earth? And how, in defiance of the Earth's gravity, is water able to rise through the trunks of gigantic trees against tens of atmospheres of pressure? Water has memory. Experiments done in many countries around the world have shown that water receives and makes an imprint of any outside influence, remembering everything that occurs in the space that surrounds it. In nature, rivers and streams always flow along a smoothly curving course. But any water supply system has multiple right-angle turns.
Water from a water supply system which flows into our homes through pipes has various forms, crystals of various forms, but they are all deformed. That is, it may look like this. It can look like this or have these crystals in many other arrangements, but you won't see any symmetry or beauty.
We have carried out many experiments on the effect that quite diverse factors have on samples of water. Magnetic fields, electrical fields, various objects, and also including a human presence and human emotions. And it became clear that positive and negative human emotions are the strongest element of influence.
A group of people were asked to project onto a flask of water in front of them very positive emotions like love, tenderness, and concern. Then, the flask was replaced with another one, and the people were asked to project emotions of a different type: fear, aggression, hatred. After this, measurements were taken on the samples. The water exhibited changes that were clearly in one direction or another.
So love increases water's energy levels and stabilizes the water, while aggressive emotions reduce the energy and make radical changes in the water.
In 1995, Dr. Masaru Emoto was the first one to record musical impressions on water. In Dr. Emoto's laboratory, they presented water with different types of music, after which they froze the water and then under the microscope could clearly see the crystals that the water had formed. Here is what the music of Bach looks like. Beethoven, heavy rock. Experiments show that aggression causes a sharp change in water's memory. Such water can provoke an aggressive state in hitherto calm people.
Intellectually, at the level of thoughts, a person who sends negative thoughts is polluting his own water, of which his body is 75 to 90% composed, and giving it a negative charge.
Let's imagine that here we have a human being, and here we have water. This water contains many different types of information. If we introduce this water into the human body, then that human body will assimilate this information, which may change the person's characteristics. In all of the world's religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, it is the practice to recite a prayer before taking food or to consecrate the food during major religious holidays. How often do we stop and think, what for? Why did something that science is only now trying to understand seem obvious to our ancestors? It turns out that the frequency of vibrations in the prayers of any religion, uttered in any language, is 8 Hertz, which corresponds to the frequency of the oscillations of the Earth's magnetic field. Therefore, a prayer, pronounced with love, creates a harmonic structure in water, which is an ingredient of absolutely all food.
We now have some idea about how this happens through the structurization of water clusters, water molecules. Therefore, we can take some purely practical advice from this: to sit down at the table in a very good mood, and under no circumstances to dine with cruel or aggressive-minded people, because this will have a direct destructive effect on our health.
Dr. Emoto's numerous experiments aimed at finding the word that cleanses water most powerfully have shown that it is not just one word, but a combination of two: love and gratitude.
Esta semana culminaba un proceso de impeachment contra la presidenta Dilma Rousseff que comenzó en octubre de 2015 y que tomaba forma cuando en diciembre el entonces presidente de la Cámara de Diputados y principal enemigo de la mandataria, Eduardo Cuña, autorizó que el proceso siguiera adelante. Y el jueves, tras más de 20 horas de sesión, el Senado aprobó el impeachment con 55 votos a favor y 22 en contra. Rousseff reaccionaba inmediatamente tildando la medida de golpe de Estado.
Ya sufrí el dolor de la tortura y el de la enfermedad. Ahora sufro el dolor innombrable de la injusticia. Ahora lo que más me duele es la injusticia. Lo que me duele es que soy víctima de una farsa jurídica y política.
Paralelamente, las calles se llenaban de manifestantes indignados con la decisión.
Estamos aquí porque la población no está de acuerdo con lo que está pasando. Brasil pasa por un momento muy difícil de golpe. Dilma Rousseff es una presidenta democráticamente electa. Es una vergüenza lo que ha pasado.
El mismo jueves asumía la presidencia interina Michel Temer del PMVD y hasta entonces vicepresidente del gobierno. Temer pedía unidad a los brasileños en su discurso inaugural. Pero este consenso va a ser difícil de lograr, ya que el actual mandatario interino ha sido vinculado con escándalos de corrupción y 7 de sus ministros están siendo investigados. Además, el viernes Wikileaks recordaba que Temer colaboró con la inteligencia estadounidense. Ahora, los brasileños aguardan bajo el mandato de un presidente no electo por el pueblo que se solucione el incierto futuro político y social del país.
En nuestra Constitución está previsto el impeachment, pero solo en algunos casos, cuando hay delitos de responsabilidad. Consideramos que se trata de un golpe porque no ha habido delitos de responsabilidad. Me juzgan por una cuestión pública, por problemas de crédito suplementario, algo que todos los presidentes antes de mí hicieron. Nunca fue un delito. El golpe actual se da en el marco de la democracia, utilizando las instituciones en provecho de un proceso de elección indirecta que no está previsto en la Constitución. Este es un golpe que se da con las manos rasgando la Constitución y no sabemos cuáles van a ser sus consecuencias. Cuando se altera el poder de esta forma en un país como Brasil, beneficia a diferentes actores. Eso está claro. Por eso, es tan grave lo que está sucediendo. No es solo una pérdida de derechos, es también una cierta, yo diría, violación de la cuestión nacional.
Yo creo que hay una equivocación, una percepción equivocada. El gobierno debería comportarse como interino, porque de aquí a 20 días, de aquí a un mes, a 2 meses o a 3 meses puede haber una votación y el Senado cambiar de posición, por lo que el gobierno interino tendría que salir y el gobierno de derecho de este país volver a asumir el poder. Así que no creo necesario ni correcto que el gobierno interino actúe como si fuese el gobierno definitivo, como si ya se hubiese votado el proceso de destitución, como si Dilma ya hubiese sido condenada definitivamente. Eso aún no ha pasado. Yo creo que el gobierno interino está actuando con mucha falta de respeto al poder que le ha otorgado el Senado. Pero el gobierno interino, como digo yo, actúa como si estuviera echando a los clientes de un café. O sea, va a cambiar ministros, va a cambiar a todo el mundo. Y si de aquí a 3 meses Dilma conquista la victoria en el Senado, va a tener que rehacerlo todo otra vez. Un país no puede soportar eso. Tenemos que ir a las calles, reivindicar que la sociedad haga presión para que Dilma vuelva a gobernar este país. La única cosa que nosotros no podemos admitir y con la que no nos podemos conformar es que en pleno siglo XXI tengamos un gobierno ilegítimo gobernando Brasil.
En Brasil es parte de todo un plan que se ha orquestado con las oligarquías de la región, junto también con fuerzas extranjeras. Todos sabemos a qué nos referimos, ¿no? Que han diseñado un plan en el sentido siguiente. Primero, como era imposible de un tiempo acá ganar las elecciones a los partidos de izquierda y progresistas, entonces diseñaron un plan en 2 fases. La primera fase, usar medios de comunicación para desacreditar a los líderes de los partidos progresistas en el gobierno, o aunque no estuvieran en el gobierno, como primera fase. Como segunda fase, entonces se plantearon judicializar los procesos políticos, y ya vemos lo que está ocurriendo con Dilma, ¿verdad? Pero también estamos viendo lo que ocurre en Argentina con Cristina, que aunque no está en el gobierno, están tratando de inhabilitarla para un próximo torneo electoral.
El presidente de Estados Unidos, Obama, quiere acabar su gestión retomando el control a Sudamérica y América Latina. Agresiones económicas, no solamente a Venezuela, sino también a Argentina, como los fondos buitres, por ejemplo. Agresiones y provocaciones o amenazas militaristas, como a Venezuela. Agresiones democráticas, pero también creando convulsión, financiando a grupos opositores a partidos. Yo siento que después de las intervenciones que hizo a Irak, a Libia, a Siria, a otros países, si ahora quiere volver a Sudamérica, en especial a recuperar el poder político para el imperio, para el capitalismo.
Durante los últimos años, la OTAN aumentó drásticamente el número y la intensidad de sus ejercicios militares en toda Europa, en especial cerca de las fronteras rusas.
Pese al progreso que hemos logrado desde el fin de la Guerra Fría, Rusia aparentemente ha intentado minar los principios del orden internacional. No hemos tenido que priorizar la disuasión en nuestro flanco oriental en los últimos 25 años, pero ahora nos vemos obligados a hacerlo.
Rusia califica estos pasos como una amenaza a su seguridad nacional.
La situación con la seguridad europea está en un callejón sin salida. Tuvimos proyectos de colaborar en la lucha antiterrorista, pero la OTAN fácilmente los sacrificó por sus ambiciones políticas cuando congeló toda cooperación con Rusia. En general, las acciones de la OTAN en su flanco oriental cambian el paisaje político-militar y convierten a Europa del noreste en una zona de tensiones.
My question is, are we sleepwalking toward actual war with Russia? Because it's we, Washington, because we control NATO. Or is this a plan to provoke a war with Russia? If we're sleepwalking, we all need to yell, wake up. If they actually now wouldn't mind a war with Russia, then they're crazy. Because there's no way, if there's a war with Russia on Russia's borders, that eventually some kind of nuclear weapons will not come into play. We have been watching now for nearly a month a steady buildup of American NATO forces along near Russia's borders, on land, on sea, and in the air. This is reported almost daily in the newspapers, but nobody connects the dots. There has been nothing like this on Russia's borders, such an amassing of hostile military force since the German invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941. So to say that the Russians take this very seriously, and I mean ordinary citizens and I mean the Kremlin, is an understatement. Putin said, let me tell you, he spoke to the West, we consider this a direct threat to our national security. He didn't talk it around. He said it's a direct threat and we will respond. We have the majority of our missile defense installations that are directed at Russia. They're not directed at Iran. That's a fairy tale. The government puts it out, but nobody believes it, not even Washington. I feel this is provocation on the part of the West and Washington and Brussels beyond any explanation. We blame solely, not just Russia, but one man, Putin's aggressive behavior. Not clear what they mean by his recent aggressive behavior. They are not aggressing at the moment. They are reacting. I mean, NATO has the chutzpah to say that Russia is moving its troops closer to NATO. Well, of course it is, because NATO's on its Russian borders. We're the ones who are outside our own territory. We're the ones that are on Russia's borders. Putin gave a speech explaining why they had annexed or reunited with Crimea. And the thing that caught my attention was a paragraph that said that since the old Soviet Union, you have driven us into a corner. We no longer have anywhere to retreat to. So when you no longer have anywhere to retreat, there's only one option. You break through and go on the offensive.
All children start out naturally curious and love to learn. When they are sent to school, instead of learning, it is a repeated process of memorizing and regurgitating information. The better you are at regurgitating this information, the better you will do in the school system. The real education is obeying authority. We are taught not to think outside the box. We are taught to memorize, regurgitate information. An input-output process not unlike a computer or a slave. We are taught to respond to a bell, just like a factory floor. We are taught to keep our head down and just make it through the day. We are not taught to develop critical thinking. We are not taught about debt-based money and the principles that our founding fathers fought for. We are not taught to cooperate and view each other as a team with individual talents and gifts. We are not taught to question authority or even the facts demanded of us. We are indoctrinated, not educated. Indoctrinated like little slaves. The secret of American schooling is that it does not teach the way children learn, nor is it supposed to. Schools were conceived to serve the economy and the social order rather than the kids and the families. That is why it's compulsory. As a consequence, the school cannot help anybody grow up because its prime directive is to retard maturity. It does it by teaching that everything is difficult, that other people run our lives, that our neighbors are untrustworthy and even dangerous. The aim of public education is not to fill the young of the species with knowledge and awaken their intelligence. Nothing could be further from the truth. The aim is simply to reduce as many individuals as possible to the same safe level, to breed and train standardized citizenry, to put down dissidence and originality. H.L. Mencken. Our education system is centered on an input-output process of information. Our success or failure depends on our efficiency of taking what the teacher tells us. This system was carefully created to mold us into what we are today. The masses blindly flow through this education system and naturally fit into centralized systems that want good, little, obedient workers who take orders without question.
We are seeing the minds of children hijacked by the state in multiple ways, because what we're looking at is the end of parenthood, which is what Aldous Huxley was talking about in Brave New World, published back in the 1930s, but not as the novel it's said to be, but more the blueprint from insider knowledge of where it was meant to go. And that is where we're going now. And look at how more and more dictatorial powers expressed by dictatorial people, often called head teachers, etc., that are being used by the state to dictate to parents and dictate to children, and more, not even dictate to them only through the school day, but what they do afterwards. What schools are programming prisons. And the idea is to use it to take children from the earliest age and program their perceptions for life, perceptions that suit the state and the need and desire for mass control. And you hear it all the time, don't you? Governments. Education should prepare children for the workplace. No, it shouldn't. Education should set free all the gifts that children have. Remembering facts and intelligence are not the same thing. But we're supposed to believe they are, so we will accept this crap called education. They are reducing and reducing and reducing the time that children and young people have to free think. Preparing children for the workplace simply means turning children into unthinking, unquestioning, acquiescent cogs to replace the previous generation of cogs in the state machine.
Our children are living in the most intensely stimulating period in the history of the earth. They're being besieged with information and calls for their attention from every platform. Computers, from iPhones, from advertising hoardings, from hundreds of television channels. And we're penalizing them now for getting distracted. From what? Boring stuff. At school, for the most part. The arts especially address the idea of aesthetic experience. An aesthetic experience is one in which your senses are operating at their peak. When you're present in the current moment, when you're resonating with the excitement of this thing that you're experiencing, when you are fully alive. An anesthetic is when you shut your senses off and deaden yourself to what's happening. We're getting our children through education by anesthetizing them. And I think we should be doing the exact opposite. We shouldn't be putting them asleep. We should be waking them up to what they have inside of themselves. We still educate children by batches. We put them through the system by age group. Why do we do that? Why is there this assumption that the most important thing kids have in common is how old they are? Well, I know kids who are much better than other kids at the same age in different disciplines. Or at different times of the day, or better in smaller groups than in large groups, or sometimes they want to be on their own. And it's about standardization. I believe we've got to go in the exact opposite direction. That's what I mean about changing the paradigm. We have to think differently about human capacity. We have to get over this old conception of academic, non-academic, abstract, theoretical, vocational. Secondly, we have to recognize that most great learning happens in groups, that collaboration is the stuff of growth. And thirdly, it's crucially about the culture of our institutions, the habits of the institution and the habitats that they occupy.
Sadly, we'll probably never know just how many innocent children became victims of the paedophile gang operating at the highest reaches of the British establishment. Certainly, we know of dozens, if not hundreds, of state wards who were trafficked from institutions to be used as playthings of the rich and powerful. Without question, the biggest political scandal Britain has ever faced, it involves a secret network of the highest office holders in the land, past and current members of Parliament, cabinet ministers, judges, diplomats, even one of the country's top spies. These men are accused of some of the most sadistic child sexual abuse imaginable on hundreds of victims. More confronting still are claims that children were killed in order to protect this network of predators. For over 40 years, the evil child predators acted with complete impunity, hiding behind the facade of respectability.
It happened to me, it happened to others, and why would it go on for so long? Why didn't somebody just step in and say, we need to investigate this?
Richard was one of dozens of boys and girls, almost all from state institutions, brought to the homes of the rich and powerful to be forced into sex with adults. How many times were you raped?
Wow. Maybe twice, 3 times a week.
Boys and girls both, farmed out to pedophiles like throwaway toys.
There would be a group of girls and a group of men. And the men would basically single out the girls, pick who they wanted, and then we'd be abused.
Disgraceful secrets are only now coming to light. Men occupying some of the highest positions in the land, whose depraved crimes have scarred a generation of children.
My soul at that time was being destroyed. And they took away everything I had.
Sexueller Missbrauch zieht sich durch alle sozialen Schichten. Es macht vor keiner Schicht Halt. Es ist nicht ein Prekariatsproblem oder ein Unterschichtenproblem. Was man sich klar machen muss, ist, dass diese Kreise hochgradig organisiert sind. Die wissen ganz genau, was sie tun. Es gibt ideologisch-rituelle Kreise aus allen religiösen Hintergründen. Die organisierte Kriminalität ist deswegen so erfolgreich, weil sie wahnsinnig gut organisiert und vernetzt ist.
Es gibt tatsächlich die Situation, dass Kinder direkt nach der Geburt von solchen Kreisen gekauft werden und die Kinder dann als Ware für Missbrauch verwendet werden von solchen Gruppen und Kreisen.
Die richten diese Kinder wirklich von Anfang an ab. Das passiert zum Teil mit Foltermethoden. Es werden wahnsinnige Schmerzen induziert. Es wird eine sogenannte dissoziative Persönlichkeitsstörung, also die Abspaltung einer Persönlichkeit, um das erlittene Leid überhaupt physisch und psychisch zu ertragen, produziert, weil das so wahnsinnig praktisch ist für Tätergruppen. Denn es werden sozusagen Persönlichkeitsanteile hervorgebracht, die nur dafür da sind, den absoluten, totalen, horrenden Horror auszuhalten, den wir uns alle überhaupt nicht vorstellen können.
Diese Täter entdecken sehr früh, ich bin anders wie die anderen. In ihrer Pubertätsphase, kurz danach, meine Orientierung geht zu Kindern hin. Und sie entdecken noch eines, was ich da will oder gar schon praktiziere. Das wird von meinem Umfeld überhaupt nicht geduldet. Und deshalb suchen sie in jungen Jahren schon nach Schutz. Schutz vor Enttarnung, Schutz vor Verdacht. Und wenn Sie jetzt 1 und 1 zusammenzählen, da entdecken Sie bald, der beste Schutz ist gesellschaftliche Achtung. Und deshalb machen Sie beruflich häufig steile Karrieren. Da haben Sie jetzt die Antwort von mir, warum Akademiker alles andere als unterrepräsentiert sind bei diesen Tätern.
Ja, Sie haben ja als biologisches System 2 Antworten auf den Angriff. Das eine ist Kampf, das andere ist Flucht. Und der Mensch ist das einzige biologische System, im Gegensatz zu Tieren, der noch über eine dritte Möglichkeit verfügt. Er friert einfach ein. Also das heißt, die Gefühle frieren ein, der Körper friert ein, die Seele friert ein. Wir sprechen auch von Seelenmord. Weil es häufig schwierig ist, bei massiven Gewalttaten den Zugang zur Emotionalität, den Zugang zur Seele wieder zu finden.
Wenn Sie anfangen, sich über Kinder in Ihrer Nähe Sorgen zu machen, weil die sich verändert haben. Manchmal stellen Sie so eine Veränderung ganz plötzlich fest und sagen, du, was ist denn mit der los? Die sieht ja ganz anders aus heute. Und manchmal stellen Sie das Schleichen fest und bemerken, ach, eigentlich geht das schon jetzt seit ein paar Monaten so. Wenn Sie also anfangen, sich Sorgen zu machen um Ihr Kind, um ein Kind, das Sie kennen, um Freunde Ihrer Kinder, nehmen Sie diese Sorgen ernst. Wenn der Gedanke aufkommt, da könnte Gewalt im Spiel sein, Gewalt in der Familie, Gewalt in irgendeinem Umfeld und oder sexualisierte Gewalt, nehmen Sie auch diesen Gedanken ernst und schieben Sie den nicht gleich weg.
Im Moment ist sexueller Kindesmissbrauch, ist sexuelle Gewalt ein Grundrisiko einer Kindheit in Deutschland.
A mí me sorprende el silencio que hay sobre algunas cosas, pero incluso el silencio a nivel usuario, que no generan un comentario. Por ejemplo, vídeos donde se veja, se hace pasar mal, se tortura incluso a bebés. Saben, esto es muy horrible, muy horrendo, es casi mejor apagar la tele, pero no hacemos ningún favor, porque siempre este mundo se ha alimentado del silencio que hay alrededor, a todos los niveles. Hemos caído en la cultura de no decir nada, de mantener esa especie de silencio sobre algo tan horrendo. Pues de ese silencio se aprovechan muchas de estas mafias, muchas de estas entidades que yo me atrevería a decir casi demoníacas, porque ¿qué naturaleza humana de verdad tiene alguien que disfruta o graba esto que les estoy contando? Yo me pregunto, ¿qué habrá en el ser humano? ¿Qué gen destruido hay ahí para que haya personas que disfruten del mal a los niños? Pervertidos, pedófilos, pederastas. Es increíble, ¿no? Pero sigue siendo como un tabú absoluto. No es una ficción, existe. Y por tanto los niños están en peligro. Hay que contar. Y usted tiene que saber que esto pasa, que no es una ficción, que han ocurrido, que están los casos documentados. A partir de ahí algo estamos haciendo. Hay que poner cerco a estos seres demoníacos. ¿Cómo que no existe el demonio? ¿Hay algo más demoníaco que lo que he contado? Hay cosas muy horribles que hacemos como que no existen, pero eso no impide que existan. Que la luz triunfe, por cierto.
In a very, very powerful statement, you say, quote, "There has been a massive cover-up in regards to ET contact with our governments, and there has been much secrecy in regards to those who have been either abducted or contacted." And this is the key. You say, "This is because an invasion has already taken place, and they don't want us to know this."
I mean, there's so much to it, and we're dealing with, reptilians that ended up going underground, but then those coming from the Draco star system is a part of the enslavement of humanity. And so we're dealing with many different species, and the invasion part of it would be the manipulation, the mind control, the dark technologies that want to control nature, want to control humans. This mass manipulation where most people don't even recognize what's going on because it seems to be a part of just the human experience. And it's that level of manipulation and control that I would say is the invasion that has been in the works for thousands and thousands of years. When we hear about treaties, we very often only hear about treaties with Eisenhower, and in fact, the treaties originated with Roosevelt and also Hitler, and what they both encountered was the Plêiadians, and both were turned down by both the Nazis and our American government in favor of the Greys and their technology. For the Nazis, it seems that they got the mind control technology, and for the US government, it seems it was more about metals and alloys and free energy and things that would just improve our life. But it wasn't until Project Paperclip, after the Second World War, got into, the American government that the mind control technology came. And that's where Montauk and other projects started to become infiltrated, and the technology, was used in somewhat of a negative way. And now it's just about, who's using these technologies for, control. And I also feel that the Zionists and the Nazis are within this shadow government, and they're somewhat on the same team, kind of like sort of a chess game between themselves. But it was all planned out this way. This is the thing with what we're dealing with. This isn't, some sort of spontaneous thing and, oh, whoops, we made a deal and sold ourselves to the Greys. I mean, this was all strategically planned, and it connects with the Rockefellers and the Bilderbergs, so that these exchanges would happen. It was all a part of the strategy all along. From what I've understood, when we're dealing with, the Roswell crash and other crashes that took place, and, all the different technologies that were exchanged for abductions, and, using human genetics in order to help a dying race, which is what they said, they're a dying race and they need our assistance, and that they would only abduct a few. We have to look at my labs and the fact that the military, got involved and started to clone or create hybrids or create these automations that appeared to be real abductions. And I think that's what ended up getting out of control, and why there are so many abduction scenarios is because of the military involvement. And so we have a choice right now whether we're going to turn into Greys by kind of giving ourselves over to these control agendas, whether it's through ignorance and not realizing it, or just kind of giving up and not taking a stand, or we have the ability to be these advanced beings that we truly are. So it's just kind of like an energy game. It's frequency battle, and it's all about, a battle for our consciousness. But these technologies and this mind control and this aerosol spraying and the chemtrails are all to just keep us locked into a dumbed down version of ourselves that can't access what we're truly made of. In this opportunity that we have during this shift time, during the stellar activation cycle, which is between 2012 and 2017, where most people will awaken, this is where they're doing extra spraying and doing more to keep us from becoming empowered. There's no real invasion that can happen when we've already been invaded. And so if they present scenarios that make it look like we're getting invaded for the first time, that's where they start to introduce the next level of their New World Order agenda. And when we deal with the economy and the potential collapse of the economy, more than likely it's a controlled collapse, and that's when we start to get chipped. And so nothing that we're going to get from the governments, I feel, is going to be truth, and that's why disclosure needs to come from us. But we're in a whole new generation now, and it's up to us to, expose all of this. We have highly advanced DNA, and this is part of the invasion. And part of the whole nature of all of this is that they don't want us to wake up to what we're truly made of, because it puts them in a position of not being able to be parasites anymore. And so the archons just feed on the fact that we think much less of ourselves than what we truly are. And the agendas that come from these archonic systems are to perpetuate these belief systems that keep us down. And they feed on us like parasites. They're mind parasites. They get in there and they exacerbate everything. And what I see for most of us is that the ripples of awakening are going to connect to so many people that have an open heart and an open mind, that it'll help them to remove themselves. And if the numbers are enough, which I think they will be, the transhuman agenda and that potential phantom Earth might not even actually happen. Really, the right thing to do is just do what you feel is the best thing. And if your intentions are in alignment with wanting the greatest good for yourself and for everybody else and for the planet, I don't think you can go wrong. And I just, really encourage people to do the same, because there are no mistakes when your heart's in the right place.
question is what happens to consciousness when we die almost assumes that consciousness has something to do with the body. So when the body dies, it really doesn't affect consciousness at all because consciousness is not a part of the body. Consciousness is not generated by the body. Consciousness is independent of the body. To get this idea, let's talk about a virtual reality game. Let's say you have an elf playing in the World of Warcraft. What happens? Now, and let's go further. The analogy there is you, the person with the computer monitor that is controlling that elf. You are the consciousness. Okay, you're the consciousness. The elf is the body, your avatar. Now, if you don't give it any input, if you don't tell it what to do or which way to look or whether to walk or sit down or stand still, it doesn't do anything. It just remains however it is and stays there. It becomes inanimate. So now here's the question. What happens to you sitting at the keyboard when your elf dies? Nothing, right? Because you don't have anything to do with the elf's body, with that character. Well, it's the same way. So we say, well, what happens to consciousness when the body dies? Well, nothing happens to you at all. You're in two different reality frames. When your physical body dies here, your consciousness becomes aware in its own reality frame. And that own reality frame is another virtual reality that is designed or generated or what can we say is made for transitions from physical to the non-physical, from consciousness playing a body to consciousness without the body. When you come to this virtual reality after a physical death, when your consciousness wakes up, if it's very strongly attached to things, very strongly attached to fear and beliefs, then it takes a while to work that off. And this transition helps that entity let go of that. Whereas if it comes in with a very light attitude, with very little fear and very little belief, then it dispenses with the past life very quickly and very easily. If you have relatives that have passed on that you're particularly fond of, these relatives will appear to be there and greet you and tell you that everything will be just fine. They won't stay around a real long time, but that will happen. Now, are they really your relatives? No, not really. They're just the larger consciousness system playing your relative. And the larger consciousness system can do that very accurately because it has all the data. It has all the experience. It has everything that was said, that was not said, that was felt, that was experienced, that every emotion. It's a really good analogy to say that when your body dies, you as consciousness start to forget the life you just led in the same way that you begin to forget a dream. We are part of an evolving consciousness system. The system itself is evolving, and we're pieces of that evolution. And the way you evolve is by experience creating change. You don't gain anything just by duplicating what you have. You gain by learning, growing, changing what you have into something better. Okay, that's growth. Evolution is not a matter of getting to an endpoint. Evolution is a matter of changing. Evolution is open-ended. Evolution is never done. As far as consciousness goes, we have no idea what its exterior environment might be, or even if there is one. That's outside of our ability to know. But in any case, you don't define your way to an endpoint to be successful. You grow up to be successful. So you've got a real system that needs to evolve. And this real system, we're a part of that system, and we are at whatever level we are. Let's say we have a fair amount of ego and a fair amount of fear. Well, we're a chunk of that system that has ego and fear. And you don't evolve the system by erasing it. It doesn't get you anywhere. The only thing that gets you further ahead is having that grow up and change.